Welcome back to the Kicks and Picks podcast. Coach Steve here with Scotty. Nick unable to make it because of dinner plans. Scott, I don't know if he's running away from that 1-9 week we had prior to the international break, but we are here to talk some big matches, both in Serie A and the Premier League. We're going to focus on, of course, Inter, Juve, and City, Liverpool. Your squad with a real big one this week. But there's big matches all over the map this week. You got Newcastle, Chelsea. You've got Villa, Spurs in the Premier League. Serie A, you've got Milan, Fiorentina, Atalanta, Napoli. So there's plenty of great action on this holiday weekend here in the U.S. If you're listening stateside, it's Thanksgiving weekend. We get a nice long weekend. Football usually takes center stage, but come the weekend, especially Saturday, a lot of great European football on the docket, and Scott and I are here to get it all to you. So, Scotty, I know you and Nick did, kind of a buy and sell last week with Johnny of Interviews podcast to kind of fill the international break void. It feels so long ago since the last time all these teams played domestically. It's not even 2 weeks, though, since the last match. It just feels like forever during the international breaks. And I don't know. I feel a little bit out of touch, but I'm glad to have club football back this week. On about you.
Yeah, the break did come at a good time because we were cooking, and then we had the wheels fall off a bit, hit the 1-9 week. So in that sense, not a bad time for a little bit of a pause, kind of get our feet back underneath ourselves. But it is unfortunate that this holiday week for us, from at least our standpoint, is the week where all these big matches are coming up. Because, like you said, in the States we have all the NFL games. We've got feast week with college basketball. It feels like it's just an impossibly crowded calendar of games, but certainly ones that I'm going to make all of my effort to watch because they're all going to be worth it. And, especially with my Liverpool taking on City.
Yeah, as you sit there in like the turkey coma for a couple days, too much turkey, mashed potatoes, and all the stuffing and other fixings there. It's a perfect weekend here in the States to sit around, watch sports, even have some great college football matchups. Of course, Michigan, Ohio State, and all that. So it is a busy weekend for sports fans. Hopefully, our wives will let us get away with watching as much of it as we can. But let's jump right into it. We'll start in the Premier League with your side because this is a side you know so well. It's Liverpool and Man City. This is at Anfield, correct? Or is it at?
No, it's at the Etihad.
Okay,
It's at
so
the
it's at
Etihad.
the Etihad, which is why City is a fairly large favorite at minus 145. Liverpool plus 330, which is also the same as the draw line, also plus 330. The over/under is set at 3.5. Scott plus 120. The under minus 160 at under 3.5. Tell us what you're seeing here. You're the guy that knows the Premier League and especially Liverpool the best. It's a huge number on your boys.
Yeah, and I think maybe before I even get into that, I'll set the stage a little bit because we did do that buy or sell last week, and trying to understand, one of the questions was, is this really a year where the field takes out the title from City, with City being so dominant the last couple seasons? And I think the fun part about this matchup is it really feels like, after Liverpool's pretty mediocre season last year, they're back to fighting form and being able to challenge the City team, because realistically over the last 5 or 6 years, they're the only team that has consistently put up a decent title fight with City. And if had it not been for them, the Premier League would have been a walk for Pep Guardiola and his squad. So I think this is a kind of a sign of, hey, maybe Liverpool's back, and in the the twilight years of the Klopp and Pep rivalry, we'll have some entertaining matchups yet to come. And I really think this match is going to go a long way in dictating who the title favorite will be, through at least the holiday period. Both clubs are within a point at this point. We've talked about Liverpool's schedule and how it's been pretty difficult, to start the season. I think it evens out a little bit going into December. City have had their own challenges. Obviously, De Bruyne comes back at probably the end of the year. So this actually has, I think, a lot of, opportunity behind it to be something that sets the stage for the next, 2 or 3 months. So yeah, with that said, it's certainly a as marquee of a matchup as you'll get in November. With the odds being at what they are, I think there's a lot that can be said about how well City have been playing in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think they've been scoring 3+ goals in at least their last 3 matches. Rodri coming back from suspension has certainly righted the ship a little bit. They had those 2 consecutive losses, which was like the first time it happened since 2018. And I think it's a sign of maybe the books being a little uncertain about Liverpool's current mini injury crisis. Andy Robertson, we know, is going to miss out. Gravenberch hurt his knee, missed the game against Brentford before the international break, so he may not be available. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a question in that sense. But what I've realized is when the books take a hard stance on this, it's usually they're trying to get people to put money on Liverpool, and that makes me nervous as a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough to go to the Etihad and win. The crowd's going to turn up, City's going to turn up, Pep's going to have his team ready, but Klopp will have his team ready too. And when I see plus 330 and a double chance line of plus 110, giving Liverpool that half a goal, that's a really intriguing number for me because I think Liverpool can go and get a result. We've seen a City side that has dropped 12 matches so far where they've dropped points. Where if you get Liverpool on a double chance at plus 110, all you need is a draw. It's going to have to be a scoring draw because there's no way you're holding City scoreless, and I don't think City's holding Liverpool scoreless, which is why the number at the over is 3.5. I think we will see goals. I went to look at the goals line or the number for the total when I was looking for my locks, and I was like, oh, let me see if it's something playable, like even play maybe like over 3 and get a push at 3 goals. And I was like, nope, not happening at 3.5. Right, I'm not going to bet over 3.5 because I could see like a 2-1 one way or another for sure, but it
Yeah,
does
look,
that.
I'll make the case for Liverpool right now. You guys know me. I'm usually pretty pessimistic on Liverpool in some of these big matches. I usually will come out and tell you, why they have no chance. I'll tell you that it's a 7:30 a.m. kickoff where, 8 of Liverpool's projected starting 11 are on a different continent playing for their national team right now.
This sounds like what we heard last international break from you, right? It's like
it
pick the
it
team with most
happens.
South Americans.
It happens every time. But I'll make the case for Liverpool because I know if Nick was here, he would be beating that into me. So I'll take that challenge. Salah right now is playing as well as he has in a Liverpool shirt. I mean, he's scoring week in and week out. When he's not scoring, he's distributing. Him and Nunez have linked up, and I think Nunez has some sort of record right now where all seven of his assists so far for Liverpool have come to just Mohamed Salah, which is the most under for one player. And you have to be really emboldened as a Liverpool fan that this Salah is the Salah that we're used to seeing, and that with the last couple of years left in his contract, he'll be able to continue to play at the level that we've expected. Because there was some concern last season that maybe he was a little bit on the back end of his career, obviously in his 30s, a player that is reliant on his speed as much as anything. Typically, it's a combination to see a decline once he starts getting into deeper into his 30s. But this season, he looks as good as he's ever has, and that's exactly what Liverpool need if they're going to compete for the title. The midfield, it looks much better. Obviously, against Brentford, they didn't have most of their guys. McAllister's missing out because of a suspension. As I mentioned, Gravenberch was hurt. But Szoboszlai has been maybe their player of the season. And what they've found with some of the younger guys like Curtis Jones is certainly enough to fill in the gaps when needed when they have some of the injuries that they've been dealing with. So I think there's a lot of good things going for them. Unfortunately, what we didn't get to talk about last week was maybe the match of the season so far in the Premier League, which is the 4-4 Chelsea City draw. And that raised a lot of eyebrows. That was I called that my bet the mortgage lock of the century game, because City did exactly what I thought they would do, and they tore Chelsea apart. They scored 4 goals. If you told me City are scoring 4 goals in that match, or you told anybody that follows the Premier League City are scoring 4 goals, 99 out of 100 will tell them that they win that game.
Right.
And
So
Chelsea,
I'm thinking about that match. Like, I would ask you, is that more of a concern for City, or is that more of like an eye opener? Like Chelsea can finally put things together. Like, to me, like, great for Chelsea that they put up 4, but at the same time, like, if you're City, you conceded 4 to a team that has really struggled to score this year.
yeah, and we kind of talk about if there ever is some sort of Achilles heel with this Manchester City squad, it's their defense. I think Ruben Diaz has not been, the anchor that he has been in recent seasons. Not that he's been playing poorly, but he's not been playing at that elite level that we're used to. They lost John Stones to injury. I know he's been kind of a key player for them in a very, underspoken way, at least within the media and online. But I think he's been a very solid contributor for them. Nathan Ake, I think, has been hurt. He's been playing a decent amount with them. They are dealing with some injuries and some downward or below bar performances by their standards. The fact that they conceded, not that just they conceded 4 goals to Chelsea, but they conceded 4 pretty clear cut chances and a penalty. I think that's the more concerning part, because
Mhm.
usually they kind of play in this like high possession, we're going to bully the other team into playing, behind the ball and keep them from really putting pressure on us. And they weren't really able to do that against Chelsea. So I think that's probably the concern more than anything. If you're, a City fan, is 4 goals to Chelsea and the way that they conceded them looks like that could be a trend that could continue.
Yeah, and speaking of scoring, I'm looking at what those, yes, the travel is going to be a lot for some of these South American players coming back to England, playing today on Tuesday, having to travel probably tomorrow, Wednesday. They probably train late on Thursday and Friday with Liverpool. But I'm looking at Darwin Nunez scoring a brace today. Obviously against one of the worst teams in South American Bolivia, but that's a brace, confidence high, right? Playing well. You have Luis
Luis
Diaz. We saw
Diaz
what he did to Brazil the other day. As the current moment, I think it's through 6 matches played in the South American qualifying. He's the highest rated player on SofaScore for average player rating through those 6 matches. And he's coming off that big brace to beat Brazil for Colombia, something that does not happen all that often. I liked Colombia to get a result in that match. Did I expect them to come from behind and win 2-1 like that? No way, right? So Diaz is feeling good. Nunez is feeling good. I believe Zozbalai also had a role for Hungary the other day in their
scored two
match,
goals.
scored
Yep.
2 goals also. So you have a front line and wingers that are like really feeling themselves right now. And I think that could really play into Liverpool's hands, especially when they see a City side that just could, and I say just, before the international break, conceded 4 times. And that's one of those things I think, even if you're Liverpool and you do fall behind early, you're like, well, this team, they shipped 4 to Chelsea. So I think in that sense, we could see goals galore if somebody scores early, because City's back line is vulnerable. And guess what? If Liverpool can find a way to score first, which we know over the last,
Never happens.
like, right, over like the last 2 years of recording this show, I know it almost never happens, right? If they find a way to do that, they could be set up, because then City's going to have to play a little bit out of their comfort zone, maybe, and maybe they could find that second or third goal. But no matter which way it plays out with who scores first, I trust Liverpool to get it. I would say, I don't know what the team total over 1.5 is. That's something I want to look at real quick right now. We'll have the odds pulled up, because
Team total
I'm looking at
for Liverpool.
plus 155. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that is almost something I'm going to play, just because seeing how well Liverpool's attackers are in form right now, and then you see how City's defense has been a little bit shakier this year. That's almost a must bet for me. Even if it doesn't hit, you feel like, I'm like, okay, if I bet it, nothing crazy, maybe a unit or something, and they don't score. I know for you it's different because it's your team. You don't want to
Well,
like put
as I
that
say, but
jinx on
doesn't
them,
that
but like
feel it feels too easy though, coach, right? Like there's
it does.
something there where like Vegas does not give you these
Yeah.
free plus
Oh,
150
of
winners.
course
Like
not.
that's
Of
not
course not.
a thing. So like what is
I'm
it? Like
assuming
what
it's
are
because
we
it's at
missing?
is it because it's at City? Like, they think City can maybe hold them to a goal, because the over a half goals minus 310. So there's a huge jump from minus half goal to, or over a half goal to over a goal and a half. Like, there's a huge jump there.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think
one of those
it's
things I could live with betting that and losing it, and Liverpool scores once or something and you don't hit, because to me at plus 155, like, it's almost a must play.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I think if you're trying to like rationalize what the books are seeing, it's hey, two of the players that you just mentioned as being strong attackers are guys coming from South America who are going to be playing on short rest, who are probably going to play at most 60 minutes in this game. You're probably looking at a starting lineup of Salah, Jota, and probably Nunez. I could also see Klopp going with Gakpo just to give Nunez a little bit more rest and bringing him on in the second half. But and again, that's not to say anything bad about Jota, who's been unbelievable for Liverpool. So I'm not complaining about him starting. It's just you're not going to be seeing these dynamic players that typically can cause a lot of trouble for back lines, especially ones that are maybe reeling a little bit from a poor performance and creating chance after chance to get you that
Mhm.
2 goals. So uh, the other thing that I kind of want to point out is we talk about all these goal scoring threats for Liverpool. If you're looking at the goal scorer props, Mohamed Salah is plus 210 anytime goal scorer.
Mm.
Darwin Nunez plus 260. Diego Jota plus 320. Luis Diaz plus 330. Those are huge numbers for a team that
Huge
just
number.
conceded 4 goals.
Yeah,
So it doesn't add up. The books know
it
something,
doesn't.
and this is a game where your initial idea was correct. Liverpool double chance in this fixture. It's going to be tightly contested. There's probably going to be 5 goals in this, maybe 4. That is absolutely the number to take at plus 110. But it feels too easy. There's clearly something that the books have rationalized that I'm missing, which is why, I'm down units on the season. And I'm going to try to learn from my mistakes here and say maybe that's valid. There's something that the books have here that is not clear to me, and I have to just trust that because they're not wrong very often, especially at a team total plus 155. That is not a mistake that they give away very often.
It's not, and I've seen Roma have team totals like that this season, and I look at my own squad very closely, and there's sometimes they're in a match like it against Inter, I'm not going to take it, right? But there were other times, and I can't remember which match off the top of my head, but I took it and it hit at a pretty decent number, and you're like, how could the books ever put a number out like that? And this to me is one of those situations where I love the shouts on the goal scorers, because even if City wins the match, if you pick the right Liverpool goal scorer, when you look at the starting lineup and you see, okay, Nunez is starting, maybe I take a shot at Nunez at, I think you said plus 260, or I'm going to take a shot at Salah plus 210 because maybe he's the most rested of the guys who's coming back from international duty. All it takes is one goal. They could go get blown out 3-1 and you could still hit a plus 210 and cover any losses you might put on that double chance or something.
Yeah.
Goal scorer props are always a crapshoot because you never know who's going to be the one that puts the ball in the back of net. But when I see numbers that are in the mid twos into the threes for players of quality like that, it's worth a shot. If you find one you like best, would I go and bet across the board? No, because you're probably going to lose 2 of the 3 most likely. But if you pick the right one, or you pick 2 of the 4 guys who are starting in the attacking fast of the match for them, you might hit one, and one of those hits more than covers the loss on the second, and you still make money.
Yeah.
Is one way to look at it. But I love those goal score numbers. I love the team total over 1.5. Now that we looked at that, I mean, I'm not saying Liverpool's going to win this match. I wouldn't bet my mortgage on Liverpool money line or even draw no bet here. Maybe take a shot at double chance, but there's a lot of value in Liverpool's the way I'm looking at it. And it's you look at the table, it's 1 point difference in the table, and it's a City side that has drop points in 3 out of 12, which is what gives me some confidence betting something in the Liverpool favor here. Now, if you're someone who really loves City's number isn't terrible either, right? What would we say, minus 135 on the money line, or minus
Minus
145 at the moment?
145. Yep.
You could go minus 145. You could do that and parlay it with the over 1.5 and get a pretty decent number, probably, if you think
Yeah,
City's
it's
going
minus
to.
110, coach. Did you look
There,
at my doc?
okay. I did not. I actually did not even look at that. But that's one of those things. If you like City to win and you want a little more value, you figure it's gonna be at least 2 goals in the match, right? At the
Yeah,
minimum.
and maybe we'll wrap up here and move on to the next one before we
Yeah.
spoil too much.
Before I
But
spoil, yeah.
I will conclude with this. I mean, listen, this is going to be the match of the weekend for England, and it'll probably be the match of the rest of the year in England. So you're probably going to want to watch this game, and you're probably going to want to gamble on this game. 5 of the last 6 meetings between these two clubs, we've seen at least 4 goals.
Yeah, there
The
you
goal
go.
scorer props, as we just talked about, Liverpool are all pretty attractive. Julian Alvarez plus 180, Phil Foden plus 280. Jeremy Doku, I'm a big fan of his, although he's on City, plus 320. The only guy I wouldn't take is Haaland at minus 150, only because what I'm actually really excited to watch is, Van Dijk has been back to his prime form too. He's been really, really strong again this season. Last season, obviously, with Haaland's first year in the Premier League, Van Dijk wasn't himself. We didn't get to really see them match up at their best. I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I think Van Dijk is ready to take on the challenge that is Erling Haaland. I think that'll be a show within a show, if you will. So at minus 150, I'm not touching that just because I think Van Dijk is going to be taking that as like an ego challenge. But certainly some of the other City goal scorers are decent value at the very least and worth a shout, in addition to the Liverpool guys we took. So I'd say pick 2, one from each club. put some money down. If one hits, you're going to get your money back. And if both hits, you're going to have a great day while you watch a really fun match.
Yeah, yeah. I think great advice there. And you don't have to go crazy with how much you wager, just to, even if it's a half unit a player, like with those kind of payouts, you're going to make some money if you hit at least one of the two. So you're looking at potential title, contender matchup there in the Premier League. Obviously, there's a little more variability because Arsenal's in there and there's some other clubs in the mix still. In Italy, it's more starting to shape into a two-team race. With Milan struggling a bit, we're now looking at Inter on 31 points heading into match day 13, and they are going to the Allianz Stadium to play Juventus, who is on 29 points. Milan has fallen off a bit down at 23, Napoli at 21. So this is really looking like it could turn into a two-horse race. And this is going to be a big one. I think if Juve goes and they get a win at home against Inter, it really, I think, established themselves as a true title contender this year after a down year last year and getting kicked out of Europe with the point deduction, all that has swirled around Juve. Allegri doing a really solid job with this side so far. 9 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. Inter 10 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Both teams very solid defenses. Neither team has given up double-digit goals yet. The only 2 teams in the league that have given up less than double-digit goals. Inter's conceded 6 and 12. Juve's conceded 7 and 12. The biggest difference is really the goal scoring, and which is something we talk about with Juve, right? They're not the most attack-minded team. They have 19 scored and 12, which is not terrible, but it is the lowest of any of the top 7 clubs that are competing for European spots in terms of goals scored. And Inter scored 29 times, league leaders in goals, far and away. The next closest side is Napoli on 24. So contrasting styles a bit in terms of the attack, but in terms of the defense, solid both sides. So Scott, what do you make of this one coming in? I mean, just to give those numbers real quick before you go, the odds are Juve at home plus 215, Inter as the road team plus 120, the draw is plus 220, and the over 2.5 is plus 110. The under is minus 140. Really, are the books disrespecting Juve here at home, or is this, Juve's finally run into a team that can match them and maybe just overpower them?
Yeah, I think this line is kind of like a microcosm of the season for these two clubs. I think we've all talked about how Inter, on paper, are by and far the most talented and best team in Italy right now. And
Mm-hmm.
the line certainly reflects that. I think at the same time, we've talked about how Juve had a little bit of a slow start, but the way that they've come on, we talk about making them our official, we made them our official prop or future, if you will, to win the league at maybe like 2 weeks ago when they're still like plus 250. And so I think they're coming on, but maybe not quite there in time for the books to really even it out. So if I'm talking about value, I think obviously the value is with Juve right now. Talking money line at plus 215. The draw no bet, I think, is plus 110. So right around even money. And I think, sometimes we say, what do the books see that we don't? I think this might be one of those times where it's like, hey, there's a trend going where, Juve obviously on a winning streak, haven't dropped points in, 2 months, it seems. And I think the books are catching up. They aren't quite there yet.
Yeah,
So
so just to interject real quick while you're on that about teams now dropping points, I should have thrown this in earlier. Juve's won 5 straight, Inter 6 straight, Juve no losses in 7, Inter no losses in 9.
yeah. And so I think in that regard, like, we know what we're going to expect from these two teams, right? Like it's going to be a tightly contested, goals are coming at a premium. I was just looking at it. I think in their last 6 meetings, it's been 2 or fewer goals in 5 of them. So,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a lot of 2-0s, 1-0s, 1-1s. It's going to be the team that has that first goal is going to dictate the rest of the match. And it's usually going to be on their terms, how they want it. So in that sense, I probably do give a little bit of an edge to Inter because we know, they have the best striking duo up top. Lautaro has been on fire. He's been probably man of the season. I don't know, player of the season. I don't know what we would call
He's
it, but
he's looking like the Capo Cagnetti for sure, the
yeah.
Golden Boot winner in Italy. I mean, the rate he's been scoring goals, and he's been it's been a couple weeks since I've looked, but he was overperforming his xG by like almost a 2-to-1 rate at one point. He was like 12 goals scored on like an xG of like 6.5. It was something really really absurd.
And that's exactly the type of guy that you would want to pin your hopes on in a match like this. So that
Mm-hmm.
is where Inter have the clear edge. But we talked about it, Nick and I talked about it last week. You know, Allegri seems to be doing a really good job with Juve. I mean, he does
Yeah.
do a pretty good job, although he takes a lot of criticism at times. What he's been doing with them the last few months, it's really encouraging. And that's the type of play like the Juve just finds ways to win. It comes across as luck sometimes, but like to me, if that happens enough, it's just clearly not luck. It's just really good management and tactics. Uh, so I think that is for me is where I would put the edge. You're getting good value with Juve, and I think if you're looking at like which team is going to be like the best drilled and ready to go, it's probably Juve in this one, especially at home.
Yeah, I wish Nick was on for this because he said these were the two best managers in the league on
Mhm.
Twitter this past week, and based on performances, their teams are performing like the best too. I mean, I think arguments can be made for other managers that are maybe managing smaller clubs that are overperforming in their own right, like Thiago Motta. I think is going to get some love this season. Maybe if, when manager of the year gets debated later on, if Bologna can keep it up. But in terms of like who's getting the most out of their sides? I mean, it's got to be these two. And I think you made a great point with whoever scores first because both these teams are in the habit of scoring first. Inter has scored first in 10 out of their last 10, Juve in 5 of their last 5. And that just shows that once they score, that lockdown defense that both teams possess really dictates the way the match will play out. I think Juve, and based on the way Allegri plays, because Juve's had less than 2.5 goals in 6 out of 7. You mentioned in the 7 out of 8 of these Derby d'Italias, less than 2.5 in 7 out of 8. You read off some scorelines, couple 1-0s, couple 1-1s. Like it's those kind of scores that you tend to see. So first goal becomes huge. It becomes a huge thing. I think I think Juve will not be as passive as not passive, but as conservative as Roma was against Inter when they lost at the San Siro a couple weeks ago. It was a 1-0 loss that Inter. It took them about 75 minutes to break Roma down, but Roma had nothing going forward to kind of combat that. I think Juve could have a little bit more going forward. I mean, Chiesa looked pretty good for Italy this week. He scored a brace in the win against North Macedonia. He's kind of starting to find his form a little bit. I think they'll have a little bit more of a counterattack, but I think Allegri is going to look to concede possession and counter. I think that's the way they're probably going to look at it. I think Inter will control a little bit more of the possession. Um, but Lautaro he could be the kind of kingmaker in this match in terms of winning it because when you are performing over performing in so to speak in terms of like your finishing like he has been like this is the kind of match you might need a really superb finish to beat either of these defenses. I think it really could come
Yeah.
down to that.
It's funny when you mention that because I think we obviously we cover Premier League and Serie A the most on this podcast, and I think one of the biggest distinctions in how these two leagues are covered. If you're talking about clubs in England, you'd be talking about this matchup of Lautaro versus Vlahovic, the two key
Mhm.
strikers up top, who's going to get the most amount of goals. In a weird way, with Italy, I think in Serie A, you're almost looking at like the matchup of Acerbi versus Bremer, like two really strong center halves, like in the peak of their playing careers. You talk about someone who played well for Italy. I think Serbia, I heard, had a really good match against Ukraine. And I think in a weird way, like it's going to come down to which of these guys is going to anchor their defense in the center of that final third the best and can really provide the
Yeah.
cover for their goalie and distribute as well. Um, and so I think like that's almost like the matchup you have to look at. And Serbia's been playing really well. I think Bremer's been playing pretty well, but maybe not quite as strong as we expect from previous seasons. So maybe that's like the difference maker. There is Bremer going to be the guy that is not necessarily prone to a mistake, but prone to be the guy that has the lapse or the misses is a half step behind that allows a clear cut chance.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting too because Acerbi has been really good. His one of his partners in that back three, Alessandro Bastoni, who tends to start with him on the Azzurri too. He's out injured, so they lose him for this one. That is a bit of a loss on the back line, but they do have a solid back line. They have a solid defense overall. I think they could deal without him, but that's just something to keep an eye on as well. But those goal scorers, like it's hard to pick one goal scorer, but something you see in this one that you don't get a lot of value on Lautaro Martinez. Now, plus 140 is not the greatest value for a goal scorer prop. Probably not something you're going to take too often. But it's the most bettable number we've seen on Martinez in a long time. I'm not saying I'm going to take it. I usually try to go a little bit higher of a number, but 140 is pretty solid for a guy like Martinez. If you think he is the difference maker in this match, that's a solid number. I would also look at Marcus Thuram plus 260, right? He's been pretty solid for Inter so far. He's been a really great addition for them. Really has made their attack much more dynamic. So definitely keep an eye on that. And I don't know if you think that maybe Juve could find the goal with Bastonia, with Pavard out, and maybe it's a Cherby and two guys who are more reserves at this point in their careers, and Darmian and DeVry playing that back three. Maybe you look at a Chiesa or somebody like that, because if you think somebody like Chiesa can strike on the counter, he's at plus 350 right now.
Yeah, and I'm just checking to see if we had props for it, but this also feels like a match where it could be a PK that decides it,
Mm,
right? And so if you're looking at like the PK takers, who's going to be
Calhanoglu
on them? Kalinoglu is certainly
plus
up there at plus
330.
330, so that could also be pretty tempting as well. How often have we seen, especially in Italy, some of these big matches that come down to a
Yeah,
PK that happens in the second half? So another thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're kind of
yeah.
looking through what you want to wager on this weekend.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a match like this that can be so tight and maybe it could come down to one bad foul. Guys that take PKs, Nick's been saying this since we started recording the show. He always says it, like when he would, before Jorginho started missing every penalty kick for Italy, when he was like money, and anytime Italy would draw a penalty, he would look at Jorginho not being a midfielder who scores a lot, but he would take all the penalties, would have value, right? So there are value in some
Yeah.
players like that. I'd also look at like goal or assist for a player like Calhanoglu when it comes out, because he takes a lot of free kicks and whips balls in that could find someone's head. He could be a guy, and he has the two, because he could create on the dribble and maybe assist a Kane or a Vlahovic, whoever's in the center. So goal or assist props could be worthwhile to look at here. They might have some value, so I would just keep an eye on those kind of things as well. But I I was so tempted to take Inter in this one on the money line at but then I'm like, you know what? The way Allegri's teams approach this match, I'm like, I can't take that chance. I think it's very hard to separate these two, especially at the Allianz. I think that's my biggest problem picking a winner here.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can wrap up. I'll kind of give you my strategy for this match. I think we're both in agreement that this is going to be tightly contested. I think it's going to
Yeah,
be, continue in that streak of, goals at a premium. I don't see this being a 3, 4, 5 goal thriller by any means. I think that's probably more going to be a Liverpool City type of match.
yeah,
So I'm looking at some of these parlays that you can do, game parlays. Again, I like Juve in this. I think in a tightly contested match at home, I like them giving the edge. So if you want to take Juve double chance and under 2.5, that's actually plus 110. And I
wow.
think that basically covers all of your bases except for a 1-0 Inter win.
So double chance and under, you said 2.5.
Yep.
Wow,
It's
that's
plus 110.
solid. Yeah, because this is not a match you expect 3 goals in. And double chance, yeah. If you think Juve can at least maintain the draw at home and keep that unbeaten streak alive, which I think that's a solid bet. Yeah, I think double chance and under 2.5 is a very solid bet at plus 110. I think that's very favorable number. That's the kind of thing we talked about too, right? When we had parked the bus on, he finds these angles, right? Like he
Yep.
gave us that Ajax minus 3.5 corners or whatever it was, like things like that. Which to be honest, I don't have the time to go looking for like giving up corners. But like if you have the time to do it, like that's where you find value in these bets. And I think like one thing we've started to do more is parlay a team we like in this case, that double chance. We think, oh, double chance got a shot, but double chance the number's not really good. But it's not gonna be a high scoring match, most likely. Like you parlay with that over rather under 2.5, or City, like we said before, you parlay with over a goal and a half because you're expecting goals in that match. I think that's how you can milk a little more value. Maybe it's like a third of a unit or a half of a unit more into the books, and it really adds value to the bets. And it's something you still feel comfortable doing.
Yeah. And like, look, if you end up getting, screwed because you took this and Juve win 3-0, then
Yeah,
so
like
be it.
right.
But unless you're taking Juve money line, like you're not really missing out on much by switching to this, anyways. So
Right, because you're never going to bet them double chance. I mean, double chance has probably got to be in the close to
right.
minus 200, right? So it's worth the shot. It's one of those things you can live with. Like that's what I'm looking at with that Liverpool team total. Like I could live with losing a bet like that when the number's that good. That's how I often approach those kind of bets. I know the odds are good for a reason, so you just have to be prepared. Like if you think it's a good bet, you just have to prepare to lose it and live with it if it goes the wrong way.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. So we mentioned there's other great matches. We're not going to have time to preview them here, but definitely lots of things we might have to talk about next time, or keep an eye on the Patreon page. We might have some props for those matches, and we will move into our locks of the week. Scotty, take us away. I probably spoiled one a little bit, but I'll let you
Yeah,
have at
well,
it now.
I'll start with the one that you spoiled. We kind of talked about it, and it's very similar to what I just talked about with the Juve double chance and under 2.5. Going back to Manchester City and Liverpool, I get why people think that there's a lot of good value on Liverpool. I don't begrudge you for taking Liverpool if that's really where you want to go. But what I've learned in the past month is that the books right now are rarely wrong with some of these trap lines. And I think Liverpool right now are a bit of a trap line. So Manchester money line, not a whole lot of juice in it, but when you parlay it with over 1.5, which I think is as much of a given in this match as anything, you actually get it to about minus 110. And that's a really good number for what feels like it has to be like a 90% chance of something of happening. Maybe Liverpool can pull it out and or maybe there's a last minute equalizer that kind of screws this. But as far as anything that you'll see in the Premier League this weekend, this is the best value that I can find. And the thing that makes me feel the best about it is those props that we talked about. If they're really going to be setting these props, like we look at the Liverpool props, I think every week, and we talk about how even some of these like secondary players like Ben Doak are usually like around plus 180. The fact that the, shortest odds are Salah at plus 210, it just tells me that they really don't think that there's going to be maybe more than one Liverpool goal in this game. And with the way that City's scoring, I just think it's going to be too much. I think this is going to be a City 3-1, maybe 2-1 win.
All right. So I'll piggyback that with a pick that I talked myself into as we were recording. I did not originally have this on my list of picks. So if this doesn't hit and Milan money line does hit, I'll be kicking myself because that was the pick I'm replacing. So I'm going Liverpool team total over 1.5 at plus 155. Wasn't something I looked at before recording. And as we were, just talking about the lines, I talked myself into this one. Like I said, after what City did against Chelsea, conceding 4, I'm trusting some of these hot Liverpool strikers, attackers, and they're not all strikers, but attacking players to score a couple times, even if City gets the win. And like I said before, if it doesn't hit, I can live with it. But at plus 155, there's just so much value. And considering the way City's played, I'm going to take a shot at it plus 155. So Milan's going to win. Mark my words. Liverpool's going to score once, and I'll lose, doubly. But I have to take this.
Coach is about to get a crash course in Darwin Nunez where he's going to miss at least one sitter
Like,
for you
yeah, a
that
bunch of
you're going
sitters.
to be texting me angrily at 8:45 in the morning on Saturday.
Yeah.
But he may also get you a 22-yard screamer on a full sprint. So
Yeah.
you'll get the full Nunez experience. I'm excited for you. All right, moving on to my second lock. I'm taking Arsenal money line at Brentford. It's minus 130. I'm taking this because as much as I love Arsenal, and I do love Arsenal, I think that they are finding ways to win, and they're going to be the third team, I think, in England. I don't think they'll keep up with City and Liverpool, but I think they're going to be a clear third. Brentford have not looked good. They got blown out by Liverpool 3-0 before the break. I know Visa and Mbeumo have been strong as an attacking duo, but Arsenal's defense is the real deal. As much as we talk about City's Achilles heel being their defense, I think Arsenal's defense is very much the real deal. Saliba has been great. Gabriella has been great. The midfield bringing in Declan Rice has certainly paid dividends for them. So I think Brentford will struggle to score in this one. And Arsenal's attack, even though it's been relatively a revolving door of players at this point, they all seem to be able to do just enough to get the 2 or 3 goals that are needed. So whether it's some combination of Martinelli, who's been playing much better this season, Saka, who's been in and out with injuries, Eddie Nketiah, who's had really, really high highs and had that hat trick a couple of weeks ago, and then also had games where he's maybe been a little bit more invisible. I think some combination of that is going to be enough for them to get the 2 goals. I don't think they'll need 3 to win, but I could even see them getting another 3 against Brentford if Liverpool can.
Yeah, I love Arsenal at minus 130. I think that's a solid number to get against a team like Brentford the way they're playing. So that's something I'm going to ride with you on for sure. This one I'm going to go and look. I'm going to preface this by saying, heading into this week, I felt like there was so much value on teams. At the same time, I'm like second guessing myself because there's too much value, like you talked about with Liverpool, Scott. One of them is Newcastle hosting Chelsea. I'm taking the money line at plus 140. Could be a lot safer to take a draw no bet here or something like that, but I'm going to go with the money line on the bigger number. It's just Chelsea started to pick things up after beating Spurs and drawing City, and all of a sudden they can score 8 goals in those 2 matches. Meanwhile, Newcastle lost to Bournemouth prior to the break. So what does logic tell me? Bet Newcastle money line. So that's what I'm going to do. I feel like Nick talking right now the way I'm talking myself into this bet. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Newcastle plus 140. Get themselves out of their funk at home. They're going to get the job done.
Yeah, so I also like that. I'm going to kind of piggyback. Well, to be fair, you're piggybacking off of me because I had this pick first, but I'm taking the Newcastle team total over 1.5 versus Chelsea at plus 125. I think the great news here for Newcastle fans and for me right now is that Alexander Isak should be back and healthy. I think they were expecting him to come back after break. I haven't seen anything that would indicate otherwise. So I think that's going to be a huge boost to their attack. That's obviously been struggling with injuries to Callum Wilson. I think Almiron has a muscle strain as well. From the midfield, Tonali being suspended, that's kind of been a little bit of a problem, but they've been able to overcome. And I think, Isak getting injected back into the lineup is going to be a nice jolt for them. Chelsea's defense has been very meh this season. It's been okay in some points and then pretty bad in other points. The fact that they're relying on 38-year-old Thiago Silva to anchor it is, credit to him. He hasn't been bad per se, but it's just kind of telling of where Chelsea are of a club right now with all the talent they bring in. They're still relying on their 38-year-old center half to kind of anchor them. So I like Newcastle getting their team total over 1.5 here. I think they can get 2, especially at home. Shouldn't be too much.
Yeah. So you and I are in sync there. If they're going to win, they're probably going to need to. So those bets kind of go hand in hand. For my last, I'm going to go to the Bundesliga, and I'm going Eintracht Frankfurt hosting Stuttgart, and I'm going with the draw line at plus 245. Eintracht has drawn 6 out of 12 this season. Stuttgart actually hasn't drawn at all this season. But between them, they've only got 4 combined losses. And something tells me to go draw line here. It's just like a gut feeling I have. I wanted to really go Stuttgart, look at their draw no bet or even money line. But because that in Frankfurt and they're a team that is comfortable drawing matches and just kind of, holding serve, so to speak, against teams that are around them in the table, it's just a gut feeling. But I see a scoring draw on the horizon. I don't see a 0-0 in any way, shape, or form. Maybe a 1-1, maybe a 2-2. But something is just telling me to take this. And at plus 245, I'm going to take a shot at it. Could make up a lot of units for us quickly after a rough week, or it could just, be another week that spirals out of control. But there's something that's just telling me go with the draw, so I'm going to do that at plus 245.
I think the pod is 2-0 on draw lines so far, something like plus 4.5 units. So
Yeah.
let's keep that momentum going.
All
Excuse me.
right. So no, bless you, Scott. And let's see. That leads us into Nick's picks here. I don't know if that's a sign of things to come here with Nick's picks. He did drop us his 3 picks before we started recording. So I'll give the first one. It is West Ham money line at plus 100. Yeah, I think it's a solid pick.
They're playing Burnley, right?
Burnley,
So
right? So yeah.
it's as good of a pick as we can get. We talked a little bit about the relegation battle in the Premier League, how we haven't seen the 3 newly promoted clubs all get relegated the very following season since 1998, I believe. And the current trio of Burnley, Luton Town, and Sheffield United are well on pace to just do that,
Yeah.
even with Everton's 10-point deduction, which is crazy, right? Like if you told me Everton getting a 10-point
Yeah.
deduction, I would have written them off. With the way that these 3 clubs are playing, I don't see them really being, any danger to Everton. So getting West Ham money line at plus 100 against one of those 3, you take your pick, Burnley, Luton Town, or Sheffield. I think Burnley is actually in last place, so they are technically the worst of the bunch. It's
Yeah, they are.
as good of a value you'll find.
Yeah. All right. His next one's got Man United draw no bet minus 125. This is at Everton, by the way. So I guess he's
Yeah.
going with the angle that Everton is going to be more downtrodden than United coming into this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, I get it. We like to punch down on Everton in seasons past, but they are in a little bit of a winning vein of form right now. I think they've won 3 of their last 5, drew 1, so really only 1 loss in their last 5 matches. Not exactly the time to be betting against them, but listen, it's kind of a win-win in this case because if Manchester United do drop points to Everton, like it's just when they started to feel like they were turning things around, they put together a string of good results. A loss at Everton is just going to bring back all that negative energy that they've really been
Yeah.
trying to run away from in the last couple of weeks.
Either that or Nick's just trying to do Cerruti a solid and just keep helping Everton, because
We
we've done that like 3 or 4
Yeah, we
times this
did say
season where
that.
we
We have
faded them and then they've
single-handedly kept
yeah.
Everton out of the relegation zone. So
All right, and then the last one, he is going with his own squad, Lazio money line -135 at Salernitana. Scott called him out in the group text on this one as he was sending us his
I
picks,
did.
and he just said basically Salernitana hasn't won all season. Like if Lazio doesn't win, then my Saudi out train will pick up full steam, SpaceX style. Get ready on Twitter if Lazio doesn't win. Basically, is what he said. So, um, honestly, I think this is a solid bet -135 against the Salernitana side that isn't that good. And I despise Lazio. But when you pick your own team, sometimes it backfires. So we'll see where it goes for Nick there.
Yeah, to clarify, I called out Nick because if you guys ever are on Twitter, you'll see like the meme that goes around where it's like, "Hey, tweet as if you've been kidnapped, but they still let you tweet, and you need your followers to know that you've been kidnapped." And like Nick eating juice to take Lazio money line is that tweet. Like if Nick sent me that text, "Hey, lock this in," I would immediately be on the phone with the first responders trying to figure out where Nick is and who has him, because that is just so far outside of his character, especially this season, that
Yeah.
it concerned me.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, maybe he's trying to buy his team some hope. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to get on board
A little.
because they didn't lose to Roma. I don't know, but he's going with a -135, decent number. And when he says Salernitana hasn't won, they legit have not won all season. So it's not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. It is fact. They have not won. They do have 5
Let
draws
the,
though, so
I was gonna
you
say, let
never
the
know.
record show I'm taking draw line now because that's ripe for a draw now.
Ripe for a draw, yeah. Probably probably a 0-0 draw if it happens too. All right, so that brings us to the podlock. Podlock finally fell a couple weeks ago when we went with that over in Germany. Probably with the only like 0-0 in the history of German football. But we are going to Lecce, draw no bet, even money at Hellas Verona with our podlock. Scott, you dug this one up. Hellas pretty much stink. They've scored 7 goals all season. They have 2 wins on the season. So we're liking Lecce, who's coming off a draw against Milan. Faded from their early season form, but you know, they're playing Hellas, and I think that's where we're going with this one.
Yeah, we love to fade Hellas Verona. I think the lock, as much as anything, is a fading of Hellas. Yeah, Lecce started off the season pretty strong. I think they were in European places up until like, I don't know, how long did they make it? So at least a month or two, right?
They made it probably 5-6 weeks into the season to at least be in the top 7. I'd say, yeah, they
Yeah,
hung
so
around
I
for a
mean
little
they
bit.
certainly came out firing, have certainly dropped off since then, but a draw no bet here at plus 100, getting that protection on a draw if they do have a little bit of a disappointing result. I think it still represents a pretty good wager, and yeah, I think I would fully expect Lecce to get the result here. We're just giving ourselves a little cover should things go awry towards the back half of the game.
Yeah, and I could easily see this being a low scoring match too. Neither side scores a whole lot. Defenses are pretty decent for clubs in their position in the bottom half of the table. Both have conceded 16 times in 12, so it's gonna be one of those 1-0, 1-1 type matches. And if Lecce could get one and then hold out against a Hella side, like I said, that has only scored 7 times, Lecce could probably cruise if they get the first goal. So that's where we're going with this one. Worst comes worst, you get the draw, you get the push, and you just take your money back and put it somewhere else.
That's right.
All right. So if you're stateside listening to us, have a happy Thanksgiving if you listen beforehand. If you're listening after the fact and you're just getting ready for the weekend, maybe on like Friday or something, enjoy the rest of the long weekend here in the States. If you're listening in other parts of the world, we are thankful for you guys tuning in. And we're going to get back. We've been a little slow on the Patreon props. We'll get back to it this week. We have a little bit of extra time to really cook some stuff up. Scott, tell everything else we've been doing. What else we should be looking out for?
Yeah, make sure if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, give us a little subscription there. We get these videos up so you can see our faces as we try to break down biggest matchups of the week and try to make you guys some money in our locks. And yeah, make sure you follow us all on socials. We like to interact with everybody that tweets at us. So if you have needs for us to break down picks, feel free to give us a shout. And until next week, we'll see you guys then.